Welcome to Impact Leadership with Fran Ferris-Ockwell. We chat with inspiring leaders who are doing business differently, shining a light on the change makers who are revolutionising the idea of leadership and showing us how and why profit, progress and purpose are all equally important.
Hi, I'm here today with Giulia from KnowThyBrand, and you're a branding and marketing expert. Thanks for being here. Giulia, would you tell me a bit about yourself and what KnowThyBrand is and how it came to be?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for having me in your podcasting interview and video. So KnowThyBrand is a social enterprise at the moment. I say at the moment because actually KnowThyBrand was created back in 2014 when I was living in Singapore. Then I moved it to London and now I'm based in Luxembourg. And last year I decided to make this shift and turn what was a successful consultancy into a social enterprise. So it's a very exciting turn for us. The company has grown in terms of members of staff. So I have 4 directors that help me with this as being a big shift, but we are very excited.
And what made you move from being a successful consultancy working internationally? I guess that must have been really exciting and profitable. What made you make that shift from doing that to becoming a social enterprise?
It's been an interesting journey, I think. I've always been interested in social causes. That's something that's always been important to me since when I was at university. I wanted to work in NGOs. So the social aspect has always been something important to me. I ended up working in marketing, but whenever I did something, I was focusing on the social aspect of marketing or, sales, all of that kind of things that trying to have an impact. When I started my company, I found that as much as I was loving, obviously, working with my clients, the project that they were giving me the most satisfaction were those that I was doing pro bono. I was doing a lot for the community, a lot for startups. I was working particularly with women. And I realized that was what would really motivate me in the morning when you wake up and you're like, oh, what do I have to do today? Those were the projects that were exciting me the most. Even if I had very interesting clients and I loved working with my clients. But what I found myself was this split. That was on one side, there were the paying clients that required all of my attention, obviously, because they are paying clients and they have expectations. And then the pro bono projects. And I wanted to give more time and more dedication to these pro bono projects. I really wanted to shift the attention from being a side of my business to be the center of my business. And it's really a question of doing for love. No, it was not a financial decision. No, let me, make a strategic business decision. It was strategic in the sense that I planned it, but it was really because the moment that it hit me, how much important these projects were for me, I couldn't look back. Like when I found a way to make it work, and it was a social enterprise, I couldn't look back. I said to my husband, I said, look, I need to do it because I don't want to go ahead with my, with a normal business. And in 10 years time, thinking back of this time when I could do the shift and I didn't. So that's what it is. And it's extremely fulfilling because you know that you have an impact on what you do. You use the services I provide are the same, but the direction is different and can really help. We focus on women in business, so I can have a real impact on women that need branding and marketing expertise.
So the women that you work with are able to tap into the type of marketing and branding support that otherwise would have only been available to, I guess, huge international companies. I mean, this is a really selfless offer that you've made to the community. It's mind-blowing in its selflessness. But how did you find that transition? Did you have to make any kind of personal adjustments? I mean, obviously financially, I'm sure it had an impact, but did you find that transition to working with smaller female-founded businesses challenging in any other sense? I'm thinking, like, for example, big international companies are probably going to have their own marketing department, and now you're probably having to support people who don't really know much about marketing at all. How have you found that transition?
That transition didn't surprise me much because I already worked before with small startups as small businesses. So that was okay. For me, the big transition has been to decide who to work with, cut out what it doesn't fit anymore into the purpose of your company, which is, a big shift. And also, to be honest, it actually has given me much more strength, because now when I talk with big organizations, I'm still partnering with them. I need them, because obviously I can't do everything for free. We are a social enterprise. A social enterprise needs to make a profit. The profit is invested in supporting, the women that I want to support. So I still need to go to the large enterprises. But while before, when I was working with these companies, we would be like, trying to impress them because of my skills and try to describe to them what they will gain by employing me. Now I have much more strength, because I say, look, not only with me you get all of this expertise and with my company, but by supporting me, you're actually having a direct impact on women that need our help. And so it gives me much more strength, much more confidence, because sales is not, I really don't like doing sales. but now for me, it's not sales per se. It's really, I have a purpose, and you need to listen to me, not because of me, but because of what the impact you can have. So that's for me as being the biggest shift. And another one shift that has not been that positive though, has been, because in the space of branding in the UK, in the area I was working in, I was quite well renowned. So I had my brand carrying my work. Like I didn't have to do much work to introduce myself, because luckily after 5 years, people kind of knew me and they will look, for my services. Now that I'm in Luxembourg, and now that I'm a social enterprise, the situation is different. And I need really to push my brand and say, hey, this is what KnowThyBrand is about. This is what we do. This is why we are credible. And it's, people don't know me, and that's okay, but it's a bit, surprising if you want, after years of being quite established in your market.
Is there a particular difference around kind of culture around social enterprise in Luxembourg and in the new environment you're working in?
Yes, I think that in the UK, social enterprises are way more established as a solution, a business, form and a business solution. Luxembourg is still exploring it. So there are some obstacles, because obviously you need to explain what a social enterprise is when you talk to people in the first place, because there is a lot of confusion between social enterprise and being a charity, as if the two things were the same. So I have a lot of questions around, so how do you make a living if you're a charity? Not a charity. So there is a lot of education, I think, it needs to be done, but more on the client side and the society at large. On the other hand, the government is putting a lot of effort to support social enterprises, and I'm very fortunate because they like my project, and I've got a lot of support from the Ministry of Social Affairs, because they want to push organizations like ours to have an impact, and so I think is a quite an interesting time to be a social enterprise in Luxembourg today.
So you're at the forefront of that change, I guess.
I think we are. Yes, it's me, and obviously there are other social enterprises. But yes, we are pushing now to get more recognition. In fact, even laws have been changed recently, and within the government to support us. So clearly there is an interest arising. So it's brilliant, because I really believe that the social enterprise is a very, very good way of doing business. So
absolutely wholeheartedly agree. I'm a big advocate for social enterprises, and I think there's different types of social enterprises and different ways of approaching it. What I'm observing in the for-profit, purely for-profit businesses I'm working in, is this kind of shift towards recognizing that being purpose-driven doesn't have to mean you're a social enterprise or a charity. You can incorporate something bigger than your corporate social responsibility agenda, but actually incorporate profit, purpose, and environmental and social impact into your, potentially into your articles, into your governing documents, and to make that part of what your business exists for, even if it is for profit. Have you noticed that business attitudes in Luxembourg are slightly different to the UK, or are international businesses kind of getting this idea that, purpose-driven business actually makes business sense right now?
Look, I'm being a big advocate of purpose-driven business, even before I embraced fully the purpose-driven goals. I think there is a lot talking about it, you can see everybody talks about we are purpose-driven, but there is a confusion between, I think, what the purpose is. There are two things. One is what purpose really means. So why you are in business versus, what is the purpose of what you're doing and what the impact it can have, because that can be two different things. And you don't necessarily need to be purpose-driven, but you need to be very clear why you exist. That's the first step. And then once you've established, that you actually want to have a purpose, it cannot just be, a purpose wash, if you want. You hear a lot of companies that say, we are purpose-driven. We are here for the good stuff. We want to have an impact. And then you see that the daily operation don't actually reflect that. That's actually what has brought me to work a lot on branding at the beginning of, towards mid of my career in the last 10 years, is because working in marketing, you see all of these big statements that companies make, but they are not actually like the experience the customers and clients and staff and everybody else has with the company is not reflective of the statement. And so it's very important that the purpose, if a company decides that they want to be purpose-driven, which we know that has a positive impact. I think there's been a lot of research that proves that especially after COVID, there's been, I think people are waking up to the idea that profit per se is not just good enough. There is something that is more valuable than money per se. So it's been proven that purpose-driven companies have a benefit, have an edge over their competitors, but this purpose has to be real, has to be, I personally believe that is not just something that is imposed from the top down. In fact, it should be something that is unpeeled and discovered with the help of the entire organization, because the CEO may not be aware of the actual impact that their company have on the life of individual people. And it needs to translate in actual actions, not just saying we are here for doing the right thing, but actually, how do you implement that? And that has dear consequences, because sometimes you have to, you need to cut some of the operations. So you have to change some of the things you do. You might need to change some of the people who work for you or the suppliers you choose. But if you want to declare yourself purpose-driven, I think it has to be more than just a tagline. It has to be something that you really commit to.
Yeah, I think I see this a lot where, it makes easy marketing, to be able to shout about the impact that you're having, but actually embedding that impact into your organizational strategy, into your culture, and into your branding. And I'm going to ask you about that now, because I know very little about this area. But actually embedding it's a very, very different thing. I was speaking to somebody just yesterday around diversity and inclusion, and they were talking about, a particular company, very, very well-known company, who shouts about how inclusive they are and, how important diversity and inclusion is to them. But when their staff are going through exit interviews, the story is very, very different. Actually, what's going on internally is very different to what's happening in their marketing and their kind of customer-facing stuff. So I guess to a certain extent that speaks to the difference between marketing and branding, and then branding and organizational strategy and culture. Can you tell me what the difference is, please, between marketing and branding? Because I find this so confusing.
I know, and you're not the only one. And trust me, having worked in marketing for over 18 years now, marketing and branding, I see that all the time. I think that my actual goal is to educate the world on the difference between branding and marketing. But you know why? Because it's very important, especially if we talk about corporation, that from the smallest one to the biggest corporation, it's very important to define a difference, because when a company thinks about marketing, they think about getting results. So I use marketing so that I can get clients in or customers in at the end of the day. And particularly startups or small businesses that have a limited budget, what they do is to invest all of the budget in their marketing, because obviously they need to have a return of investment. Now, branding is a much gray area where, if you're a startup and I ask you, do you have your brand sorted out? You're like, yeah, I got my logo done, and now can we work on my marketing needs? Now, put simply, I use a 3-step approach. Okay. The first part is strategic branding, then there is the visual identity, and then there is the marketing communication. If we take branding and marketing in this order, I think it will make more sense, because when we talk about strategic branding, what we're really talking about is your positioning. Okay, so we're talking about your market. Think about as if you were a coach of a football team. Okay, you are the CEO, so you're the coach. But if you don't know the team you play against, so your competitor, if you don't know the pitch where you're playing in, which is your market, how can you make a strategy around your business? How can you win your game? And you also need to know your teams, which is actually your own identity. So when we talk about strategic branding, we're really talking about understanding your audience, understanding the market, understand if there is a need for your services or not, or your products, because that unfortunately happens a lot with startups. I have an idea and they run for it and might then discover that there was no need, or the price or the condition they produce this product actually doesn't serve the audience that they had in mind. So understanding the market, understanding the competitors, see what spaces are available, where niche they can fit in, and then working on their own position, what I call the brand roadmap. And the brand roadmap is very simple, honestly. It's just understanding who you are as a company. It's very simple. It's who you are, why you do what you do, what you want to achieve, how you're going to achieve it, and what values are going to support all of your activities. And let me make a distinction between what I said before, between why and purpose. Mm-hmm. The why doesn't need to be a purpose, a good purpose. If you take, for instance, Harley Davidson, the motorbikes, mm-hmm. Their purpose is not to be good. In fact, all they do is about being rebels and, this idea of freedom and break the rules. And okay, fine, as long as you know it, and everybody in organizations know, and everything you do is aligned with that, you don't need to be purpose-driven. Now, could you be purpose-driven within this frame? Yes, you could, because you could still find a lot of ways to add impact to your organization. But these are two different things. So when we started from the why, we had the famous Cynic, it all starts from why. I don't know if you ever listened to him. It doesn't talk about having a good purpose in life. It's talking about why you started your business. Now when you start, you define that. If you believe that you can actually have an impact, then, and that's where we're going to look at your values, really what drives you as a company and what you're expecting everybody who works in your company to be driven by. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person in the company needs to have the same values. That would be ridiculous, but the values needs to be aligned and the goal has to be clear so that everybody can walk in knowing what the goal is and what they can bring to achieve the goal. Now, the benefit of being purpose-driven is if people believe in what you do, if they believe in what the impact of their work is, well, then you have loyal employees because they want to work for you. They want to make sure that your company achieves the goals that are set because it makes them happy, because their values are aligned to yours. Okay. So that is the first part. This is strategic branding. And that's what we do a lot with startups because it's a bit mostly overlooked as a step. We all wanted to go to the logo, but the logo, the website, the tone of voice that you use in your communication, those are all a reflection of what your company purpose is and what your company position is. And I give you a simple example. When I was at normal consultancy, for instance, obviously I've done this exercise for me in both for the normal consultancy and for the social enterprise. For the normal consultancy, it was very much about branding and using branding to as a cornerstone for any business. And it was very professional. Everything was on that sense, what my vision was, what I wanted to achieve, etc. When you translate that onto your website, for example, then your website is very professional, it's very clean, it's very crisp, because all you want to say is, we are here to support you from your branding point of view. Now that my social enterprise is born, well, it's changed because the purpose is different. And the tone of voice is completely different, and the visual identity is completely different. And we are about to launch the new website, and it's completely completely different from what it was before. It's more powerful, it's colorful, is really bold, if you want, because the message is completely different, because our purpose is different. We want to change the world. We don't want anymore just to help businesses with the branding. We want to use branding and marketing to help women. And so that's why it's so important to start from who you are before you go on to the logo. Otherwise, you end up with a logo. I'm sure it's going to be beautiful if you have a good, graphic designer, but how can it be a real, true representation of your brand? And also, how can it be so different from your competitors? Because, otherwise, how many times you see a website that looks exactly the same, with the same information? So once you've done that, once you've done who you are, what you do, what you want to do, how you're going to get there, which fits also obviously in your business plan, is something you need to do together with your business plan and your business strategy. Then you have your identity, brand identity. So we're talking about the visual, so the sound, how you sound, your look and feel. And then finally, now that we know our audience, we know who we are, we know what we look like and what we sound like, then we go into marketing, because then is when you get the message out there. But if you haven't done the research on your audience, you are not able to create messaging that relates to your audience. And that's why we work on 3 steps. I hope that's clear.
Absolutely. I feel like learning from what you've just said, that I have a huge amount of work to do on my own branding and brand identity. That's on my to-do list. Does it lead to a more successful outcome with marketing generally? So if you have your brand identity, you have your strategic branding nailed down, I mean, quite often people throw a ton of money at paid advertisements, and it won't lead to any leads at all, or it will lead to leads that just aren't the right leads for their business. Do you see an increase in kind of the efficacy of advertising because people have got their brand right?
Absolutely. Yes, on so many levels. First of all, you are more sharp in where you put your money. So you're not going to go for trying to reach out to everybody with any message, because at that point that you don't want everybody and anybody. You know exactly who you want, you know what they need, and so your message is going to be crafted. You're going to use the right tools, because in marketing there is anything from traditional advertising, radio, to obviously digital marketing, email marketing. You will know what works for your audience, and you will adapt your message to your audience. I've seen it constantly. I work with when I work with my clients actively, some of the clients I support them on marketing daily pretty much. And I've seen the shift and the impact that the being more strategic about your brand has on the results of your marketing. Because as I said, you reach the right audience with the right message. I have a different story, which is the opposite. And once I was called, because you just mentioned spending money in Google advertising and not getting a return. For instance, once I was called by a colleague of mine that was helping one of his clients, and this client just spent $10,000 in Google advertising. And in all of that, he got only 1 client.
Wow.
When they called me, they wanted help with their marketing strategy. But the first thing I did was to look at what the whole marketing, what was happening. And basically I landed on this website that was exactly the same as all the competitors. The call to action was that it was cheaper, but actually if you're looking at the prices, it was not cheaper whatsoever. And being cheap is a dangerous value proposition. I mean, you can use it if you're like Primark, or someone that can really deliver on being the cheapest. But otherwise, being cheap is not necessarily what your audience maybe is looking for. Are you sure that they want something cheap? Maybe they want something premium, because often with premium there is an association of value and reliability. And second, it's very easy for someone else to be cheaper than you. So they chose cheap as their differentiator, but it wasn't even true. And it was lacking any sort of uniqueness anything that people could relate, because what the brand does, it creates a story, a connection with your audience. So no wonder that he was spending all this money, because he had a good tagline. My friend was making very good marketing taglines for him. There was no problem with on that side. But the tagline, then you click, so you spend, because with Google advertising, every time someone clicks, you pay. But then the experience on the website, when the people who actually get to know the brand didn't say anything to them, so bounce rate, out. And unfortunately, I understand it's difficult to admit that. That's why I say that it's important to start before, ideally, rather than retrofit, because in that case, all I could offer was like, we need to go back to the drawing board and start from your brand. And once you just stop every advertising, pause, stop, let's start from your brand. And once we've established that, then, marketing is the last thing. And maybe we figure out that Google advertising wasn't even the best tool for you to use. But we first need to start from your brand. And I understand it's difficult. And that's actually something that I'm really working at the moment, to try to create programs that are really affordable, so that I can reach more startups, because I really want them to invest in their brand first. It's proven that companies with a strong brand have much more success, and they're less likely to fail, especially for startups. Is very important. A lot of startups unfortunately fail. And it's not just due to branding, but having a strong brand, going through that process of understanding who you are and what you want to do really helps you to set the right, put everything in place in the right way.
That's fascinating. So, even companies who, I assume that this man had a pretty hefty marketing budget to start out, if he was able to put £10,000 into Google Ads. So for a female founder, or for someone who's bootstrapping a startup, who's got no marketing budget whatsoever, what does KnowThyBrand offer in terms of support as a social enterprise? How can people access the support from you? Do they need to have a £10,000 marketing budget, or can they? Yeah.
At least 10,000, actually 1 million if you can. No, we try to provide the same support to everyone. That's our goal. Obviously, we are still at the beginning, so we need more and more supporters that can chip in to help us provide this kind of support. And that's why, in the meantime, I'm trying to come in with these programs that are maybe less intense, but they can give you still the value that you need to start your business. Also, marketing doesn't always need to be about money. I mean, I know that sounds, but if you've done your homework correctly and the first couple of steps right, when you start marketing, there are a lot of ways that you can engage your audience without having to spend a fortune. In fact, the Google advertising is the last of the recommendation I make to my clients. It's not because it doesn't work. You can do that. But if I'm helping someone with a limited budget, why would I encourage them to spend all of their money on Google Ads with all the risks associated with that? And I'm not, please, Google, don't get offended. I don't think that you're a bad guy, but you need a budget. I work with companies that have big budgets on their Google advertising. Usually they also have experts that just run that, because it's so. If a small startup comes to me, what I usually try to do is to make a strategy for them and then train them on what they can do by themselves, so that they don't need me anymore. They don't need anybody else, but they can still have the results, and are all proven tactics. It's not something that I'm telling you. Is proven, and you can do it yourself, or especially if you have someone that can help, even a junior, we give the support to the junior person so they can learn. So your staff is happy because they're learning new things. You have an idea what is happening, so you're not out, because often when we delegate, we actually abdicate. It's something that startups tend to do. Is like, okay, you look after my marketing, and then they don't know anything of where the budget is going or something like that. So I think especially as a startup, but anyway, as a CEO, it's very important we know where our budget is going. And marketing is not just there to make us look good. It's not about how many likes you get or how many, share you get. It's how much support you give effectively to sales. And so, in fact, I speak about marketing usually as for sale and marketing. So how to make sure that marketing brings sales, because that's what we need. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So at the moment, I'm working with a lot of organisations who are using. So we have this program called Kickstart here in the UK. You might know about it. The government have funded a ton of money to support young people who have been out of work into work after COVID, after the pandemic. And so they're giving young people placements in employment and effectively paying their salary costs for 6 months, which is great for businesses. Wow. But what we're seeing is a huge amount of businesses, just bringing on Kickstart people, young people who have not really worked before, and who probably lack the kind of confidence and experience that they need to be able to go into a role and just own it. But because they're young and they know all about social media, companies are saying, can you come in and do my marketing for me? And I get 6 months free marketing. So, these poor young kids are coming in and they're just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and companies don't know how to support them with it, because they don't, if they knew, then they wouldn't have to hire a Kickstart person to come in and sort it out for them for 6 months. So I worry with that, there's a lot of pressure being put on young people because they're digital natives, because they kind of get social media personally, that they're then, given the responsibility of the entire marketing function of a startup company, and expected to run with that. Marketing and branding is a really specialist area, and I've been slogging away at my business for nearly 2 years now, and I just don't even really know what I'm doing when it comes to marketing and branding. So it's really interesting to hear this kind of approach you're taking, where you can support businesses to support their young staff or their junior staff as they're coming through. And I think there'd be a huge need for that with startups and social enterprises, particularly in the coming years. I think it's going to be a huge area of growth. And we see the same thing with internships as well. We've just recently gone through the internship process, and all of the vacancies where we need a social media and marketing communications person, like the fact that these young people are 20 or 21 years old suddenly qualifies them to be strategic marketing experts. So just having access to the type of support that you offer is going to be invaluable for a huge amount of businesses, my own included, I have to say.
No, honestly, I totally agree with you. I think I always joked actually, but even before COVID, that a lot of people ask for digital marketing, like, oh, no, I'm just going to ask to my niece because she's very good with, with Instagram. And you're like, yeah, good. But actually, is your business even needing, Instagram? Because maybe they need a LinkedIn, and it is unfair. I think it is unfair to put all of this pressure on these young people, bearing in mind that they also, I teach at university and I really care about my students, and the students that come out now from university, they had a very different experience of university than we had, because for 1 year they've been learning remotely pretty much. They've lacked all of the fun we had at university, because university were good years for fun, and they grew up very fast in a very challenging environment, and they're now expected to know a lot. First of all, any graduate, well, the vast majority of graduates don't know a lot. They know what they've learned. They come with very good ideas. I love working with young people because they always throw good ideas at you. And we've been doing the same thing on and on and on in our life. And then this young person comes and say, oh, why don't we do it this way? And you're like, you know what? That's a good idea. But we need to give them the tools to bring that ideas forwards, because if we crush them, if we give them too many responsibilities and then they feel inadequate and then they quit, those brilliant ideas will never be heard. So it's very important to support young people. And if you think a social enterprise, for instance, maybe they don't have money at the beginning to pay huge salary, but what about supporting them by giving them training? And now I'm talking about marketing, but could be training in other areas, like trade their support with your knowledge, so that you can help them and they can help you. I think it's
mutually beneficial.
Exactly.
We've got a responsibility to support these young people as they're coming through, because they're going to move on into their careers, and if we're damaging their confidence and self-esteem at the outset, then that's
horrible.
It really will. Okay, fantastic. I have one more question around marketing before I wrap up. Logos. On the subject of logos, increasingly I am seeing, I don't know anything about logos. I don't know what a logo should look like, or how people should go about getting one, or if they are even necessary. But increasingly I'm seeing social enterprises and organizations that I'm working with paying someone on Fiverr or Upwork, 50 quid, 100 quid, something like that, and saying, can you design me a logo? And then they come back, like you said, it's a great, beautiful piece of graphic design, but once they have that logo and they just, they stick it on their letterheads or their email signatures, they think they're done. They think that's the height of it. Should people even be concerned about logos? And if they should, is it something that they need to think about straight away? Can they come back to it and revisit it later on? Should they really absolutely fundamentally start with their brand positioning and their why?
So that's a very good question. Actually, I have my own podcast, as you know, because you're going to be invited on it. But I had this conversation with two branding experts that I'm invited. And we all agreed on something. Your logo is not your priority. And I talk about very openly about my own company. When I started KnowThyBrand back in 2014, I font typed KnowThyBrand. I come up with a name and I needed other things first. My logo was the last thing I needed. I needed to, at the time when I very first started, I needed to make a business case just to open the business. So the first thing I needed was to have something that I can send and say, this is me. And I need to really work on my brand before I design my logo. So my previous logo, for instance, so we had a type font, which actually was green, nothing to do with what is looking now. When I finally made my logo, right, that took more than 1 year. The icon was really representative of knowing yourself inside out, because KnowThyBrand come from know thyself. So the icon was a representation of the being open to the outside and being, open to the inside. And I came out when I was ready to share my story comfortably and say exactly what KnowThyBrand standing for. And all these other two experts I talk with, one of which is a designer. So clearly someone that knows one or two things about logos. We all agree that is not the first thing you need to think about. Especially, most importantly, do not spend thousands of pounds, which is what often happens, on your logo at the very beginning. A logo will evolve. Brands evolve. That always happens. Like a brand is a living thing. It's not something you set in stone. When you've done your position at the beginning, that doesn't mean it's never going to change. I mean, it's a living thing. It will evolve as your company evolves. But so I will focus more on understanding, as I said before, who you are and what you're doing, and how you're going to get there, understanding your market and understanding your audience. And use any kind of logo. It's fine. Don't invest too much money on it though. And don't invest too much into make everything that reflects that logo until you've done the work on your personal, on your branding. Because if you spend a lot of money in business cards and this and that, and then all of a sudden you're kind of stuck with that logo, because it will be such a cost to go back and change it. So maybe take a little bit more time on the first step. And there is no rush at the beginning. You can just talk about your own brand and just, get people to know you. And then you move into work with designers. There is no any harm to work with designer, but try to choose a designer that specializes in strategic branding as well, that they understand the importance of getting your brand rather than just doing there are different branches of designing. So some focus on, social media design, infographic or something like that. Try to find someone that focuses on brand, because they will help you.
I mean, again, this speaks to the idea that branding, marketing, strategic marketing, all of this area it's so specialist and it's so niche, and there are so many different avenues and arms of the sector. We shouldn't assume that, hiring a marketing consultant or hiring a social media consultant is all we need to think about. We need to start from that foundational point of, our strategic branding. Exactly. So for people who are looking to do that, for individuals, women, social enterprises who are looking to take that first step, how do they get in touch with you, and how can you help?
Well, I would say the first thing, they can email me, Giulia@knowthybrand.com. I will be more than happy to have just a chat, understand what their needs are, and then together we can come up with the best solution, understanding what, how much they can invest in that. And I really want to provide the bespoke solutions to my clients, because every client for me, and in fact, we don't call them clients, we call them members. Every member for us is different, and we want to support them. So just get in contact or via LinkedIn, Giulia.Iannucci on LinkedIn, easy to find. Well, if you can spell my name, that's very complicated.
And your new website is due to launch soon, you said. When's that going live?
This morning I was told it's going to be next week. But Yeah, I want to see that because, but yeah, it should be next week. I'm very excited. It's a very good representation, I think, of what we are set to do and helping women.
Well, we're recording this on the 8th of September and I'm about to go on holiday. So I would imagine by the time this goes live, your website may well be live also.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Otherwise, there'll be some problems.
So what's the address of your website? Or what will be the address of your website?
No, www.knowthybrand.com.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Well, I feel like I've learned a lot this morning, mainly how much I don't know. I need to go away and really give this stuff some thoughts. So thank you for your time, Giulia. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you and hearing your wisdom. And I can highly recommend that anybody that's watching this should get in touch with you and really think about the strategic branding for their business. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and enjoy your holidays.
I will.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Impact Leadership, don't forget to subscribe and head to our website for more great content.